You're watching PaperLoud, stories you can feel, questions that change you. Because every truth has a voice. There's a kind of exclusion that slams the door in your face. A sharp no, a mocking smile, a laugh you can feel in your bones. Most of the time, though, it doesn't look like that. Most of the time, it moves quietly. You speak up in a meeting and the air just swallows your words. A couple of minutes later, the same sentence comes out of a different mouth and suddenly people lean forward as if something brilliant just landed. Later that night, you're at a table, a joke goes around, everyone laughs, and there's that awkward pause where you smile because it seems safer than asking to be let in. No fight, no open rejection, and still you're standing on the wrong side of the circle. Researchers have a name for these moments that don't make noise but leave marks anyway. Micro-exclusions. A conversation that folds up when you step through the doorway. A group chat where your message sits untouched while replies stack under everyone else. Eyes that slide past you like you're smoke. Alone, none of this looks like a crisis. But small things that repeat become patterns, and patterns become stories, and stories change the way you see yourself. A drip doesn't crack stone in one hit. It works on it day after day until the surface gives way. Your body notices long before your mind is ready to admit it. You lie awake and replay the scene. You check your phone more than you want to admit. You feel that tightness in your chest when a notification pops and it's not the person you hoped for. People call it stress, but inside it feels like a low siren that never shuts off. The longing is basic. When it gets denied enough times, the message sticks. You matter less here. You start to plan around that message without ever saying it out loud. What makes it worse is that most of this isn't deliberate. It's the byproduct of speed, group habits, little hierarchies nobody names. For the person who's not being met halfway, intent doesn't change the impact. The longer it goes on, the more you adjust your reach. You talk a little less, you ask fewer follow-ups, you pitch the safe idea instead of the one you believe in. A quiet loop forms. The less you risk, the less you're seen. The less you're seen, the less you risk. If you've lived inside that loop, you know it doesn't explode, it erodes. The digital layer adds a harsh kind of clarity. There, it's measurable. Blue checkmarks without replies. Stories of a night out you didn't hear about. That online badge next to your name while your message stares back, unanswered. You can't tell yourself you imagined it. Your screen won't let you. Even language turns into a gate. Inside jokes, niche memes, fast-moving slang. If you've got the code, you're welcomed. If you don't, you're left smiling from the edge. Teenagers feel this pressure like weather, but offices are full of it too. A phrase, a reference, a shared history you weren't there for. Each one sounds small until you count how many you collect in a week. One sting you can shrug off. 100 rewire the way you think. You catch yourself in the mirror and the questions arrive on their own schedule. Maybe I'm not that interesting. Maybe I'm not enough for this room. Thoughts like that don't shout. They settle. And once they settle, you start holding yourself back before anyone else gets the chance. Exclusion doesn't have to raise its voice. It whispers. Whispers are the ones that stay. And when nobody opens the door, you learn to make yourself smaller so you fit through the gap. Not because you're weak, because it feels safer. That's where the next chapter begins. Sometimes the answer to that kind of quiet hurt isn't to disappear, it's to perform. You laugh on cue, you say it's fine when it isn't. You shave off the rough edges of your opinion so it doesn't catch on anyone. From the outside, this looks like social grace. Inside, it starts to feel like you're trading pieces of yourself for temporary peace. It works at first. A quick nod can save an argument. A smooth reply can keep a room warm. You pick up on rhythm, you shape your tone to match the group, you move with the current. A little of that is just being human. The trouble begins when it stops being a choice and becomes the only way you know how to move. That's when the fatigue creeps in that sleep can't fix. Not the kind that comes from long hours, the kind that comes from holding yourself in place all day. The online stage amplifies everything. We talk about honesty on platforms that reward a polished version of it. Real posts shot from the best angle after the third take, captions that sound raw but land perfectly on trend. There's even a name for the smile that never slips: toxic positivity. It tells you to keep brightening the room no matter what the room is doing to you. Add FOMO to the mix, the ache that everyone else is living more, laughing more, belonging more, and you start running in a race you never agreed to enter. The more you try to keep up, the further away you feel from whatever used to be simple. This isn't just a young person's story. Workplaces run on performances too. The colleague who says yes because it buys another day without conflict. The manager who keeps the mask of certainty because that's what the title seems to demand. Adjustment protects you from being pushed out, but it also keeps the people who might love the real you from ever getting a chance to meet them. You build a network. What you don't build is home. There's another cost you don't see until it's taken its toll. Constant self-editing steals attention. You're listening and tracking and translating all at once. You don't just show up to the moment, you manage it. That's why the tiredness feels out of proportion. It is. You spent half your day acting like a softer version of yourself so nobody would flinch, and the other half recovering from it. You can find extreme examples in fame, but you don't need a stadium to know the feeling. It shows up at a dinner where you nod through a topic that knots your stomach. It shows up at the office when you smile and say, "Good idea," because you're counting the meetings, not the truth. It shows up on a bus when you type and delete the same sentence 3 times, because the second you say what you mean, you can't take it back. The performance buys you belonging in the moment. It sells connection in the long run. And the longer you wear the role, the harder it is to remember how to take it off. So what does not performing look like when the stakes feel high and the room feels cooled? It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't have to flip a table to be honest. Sometimes it starts with 2 honest seconds tucked into a safe sentence. You speak, and instead of sanding it down, you leave one edge as it is. You say, "I see it differently," and you let that line stand long enough for it to breathe. If that sounds small, that's the point. Big moves scare people. Small truths teach them how to meet you. If you run on performance for a long time, your first tries will probably feel clumsy. That's okay. A role can be fluent. Your real voice might not be at the beginning. The work is to keep trying in rooms that won't punish you for it, and to step back from rooms that do. That's not rebellion. That's maintenance. There's a difference. The question that matters is simple. Can you leave a conversation a little more yourself than you were when you walked in? If the answer is yes, you're moving the right way. Letting go of the role doesn't mean burning down your bridges. It means building the right ones. The first steps are smaller than you think. You answer, "How are you?" without grabbing the nearest script. You ask to be brought into a joke instead of pretending you got it. You say no once and don't rush to cover it with an apology. You don't need a spotlight speech. You need a little more gravity in your words so people can feel where you are. Trust doesn't grow from grand gestures, it grows from repeated ones. A short check-in that you keep doing, a small invitation that you keep offering, a conversation where you don't perform the punchline, you say the thing. These are the kinds of moments friends remember later when they tell you why they stayed. There's a name for the approach if you like names, but you don't need one. You already know the rhythm. Less polish, more presence, fewer borrowed yeses, one clear boundary you keep. If you want something more concrete, try changing the setting before you change the script. It's easier to be real on a walk than at a table where everyone performs for each other. It's easier to be honest at the end of a meeting than in the first 5 minutes when the room is still stiff. It's easier to say, "I need a second," than to pretend you didn't feel what you felt. Little moves like that don't make headlines, they make space. You'll notice something if you keep at it. The people who only liked your role won't know what to do with you. Some will step back. Let them. The people who were waiting for you to show up will step closer. They're rare, but they're worth the wait. Their presence is quieter than applause and heavier than approval. They don't just like you, they recognize you. Systems can help, and in some places they do. There are programs that nudge people toward each other instead of leaving them to drift. Community groups, shared projects, even doctors who point patients toward connection, not just pills. Safety nets matter because fear shrinks our courage, and courage is what lets us risk being seen. But the heart of it doesn't live in policy. It lives in the next sentence you say out loud. Health follows connection more closely than we want to admit. When your relationships are brittle, your stress stays high and your body pays the bell. When your relationships are steady, your nervous system gets to stand down. You sleep deeper. You get sick less. You don't need a study in your hand to notice it. You feel it when someone says, "I'm here," and you believe them. You might lose a few easy wins at the beginning. Fewer likes, fewer polite nods, fewer rooms where you glide without friction. What you gain is heavier. Someone looks at you and says, "I see you," and you can tell they mean the person you brought, not the part you played. That kind of recognition doesn't flash, it anchors. Exclusion was the first wound. Performance looked like a shield. Healing begins when you let the shield drop a few centimeters and test whether the room can handle who you are. Some rooms can't. Step toward the ones that can. That's not defiance, that's choosing a place where your voice makes sound. If this struck something in you, spend the next day trying one thing a little differently. Answer one question without the safe answer. Ask to be brought into a joke instead of pretending you got it. Say no once, and don't rush to cover it with an apology. You don't need a spotlight speech. You need a little more gravity in your words so people can feel where you are. Loneliness hides in quiet places, between messages left unread, in meetings where your idea lands only when someone else repeats it, in the role you wear so nobody calls you difficult. The way out isn't louder acting, it's steadier honesty. If this chapter helped you, watch the next piece. You'll find more stories, more language, and more ways to move from standing outside the circle to standing where your voice carries. Stay loud, stay human, stay connected. We are PaperLoud. We see you next time. Take care.